These are the thumbnails from the first 50 batch video series. We've managed to freeze dry a lot of food, including a few that I hadn't done before. I hadn't done the oatmeal before, or minute rice, nor had I done cherry pie filling like this before. And we found out that Costco chicken may be the best way to get pre-cooked chicken for freeze drying. It's a great value. They worked out really well, and I would do these things again. As all the thumbnails go by, please take a look at them. If you haven't seen some of them, go back and look at them. There's a lot of videos there with a lot of different items. And if there's ones that you would like to see that you still haven't seen, beyond these 50, leave a note. I'll try to make a video. More than once I've made a video because a single person has asked about something. To me, there's a difference between rehydrate and reconstitute. I use rehydrate when referring to putting water back in freeze-dried food. The 50 batches is done. They're in these bins. The total wet weight of all the food would have been 543 pounds. Some of it was dry before we freeze-dried it, but I'm using the wet weight of that food. For instance, the hash browns, each little box made 1 pound when it was rehydrated. So I used 1 pound per box as the weight. The actual weight that we freeze-dried was less than that. But for usable food, it's 543 pounds worth of wet weight. Now the weight is 130 pounds of dry weight of the food. With the bins and the bags and the oxygen absorbers, so all of the components as it sits now. So basically I weighed all these containers. It's just about 220 pounds. So it's 90 pounds of the bins and the bags. If you were to bag them in bigger bags, then the percentage would be lower of usable food to the tare weight portion of it. But this really works out for the way we use it. There's still room for more bags in these bins. A couple of the bins have room for at least 2, maybe even 3 batches. Most bins have room for another batch. I probably could have put all of this into 7 bins instead of 8. With that in mind, my plan will be to do a few more batches and add to these bins and find out how much will fit. And we'll cover that in the future. Maybe put it on the community page or something. Probably not a whole video. It's probably not that interesting. I'll put this up on the screen to make it more visible. So this is the inventory of these 8 bins. It's kind of a small version of how we do the racks that are behind me. It has each bin, what's in it, the date that it was freeze-dried, and then how many bags it is. If we ignore the J bin, all the other bins combined, if we add up the bags and divide it by the 7, it's approximately 72.5 bags per bin. Bin number 5 has 72 bags in it, so it's almost exactly the average bin. I'll take all these bags out and so you can get an idea of what that looks like, and then that's the average for each bin. So the cost for all of this, excluding the cost of the bins themselves, because I didn't add that because they won't be consumed, they would just be reused, is about $1,350. So 50 batches, $1,350 all in. Now, again, electricity is going to be a difference for everybody, but the electricity was only 10% of the total cost. These bins are not good for putting this amount of weight in and then stacking them 4 or 5 high. If you stack them 5 high, then the bottom one's going to have over 100 pounds sitting on it the way this is. I think it's going to bulge out the sides after a while and cause a problem. So sitting them on the racks I think is a better idea. Next I'll empty out bin 5 so we can get a look at what that looks like. So that'll probably be over there. This is the contents from bin 5. So all of the batches from bin 5. So this is the average number in each of the bins. The average was 72 and a half. This is 72 bags. So this is what, on the average, each bin has as far as quantity. When I was doing them, we did a mix of different things for each bin. So we have apricots, cottage cheese, broccoli, mashed potatoes, shredded Costco rotisserie chicken, one of my favorites, cilantro lime pulled pork, it's one that we added, it was the last part of the last batch that we did, and then scallop potatoes. So we've got a good mix of things. You could make quite a few meals out of this. I mean, I find it really fun to look at a whole bin's worth of them and compare that to if you were buying them from something like a Mountain House Camping Foods or something like that. Total, between all 8 bins, we have 649 bags. Bin J does skew it a bit because that bin has 121 bags. So if we assume an average cost of $7 per bag, and the total of this series was 649 bags, that's over $4,400 worth. And the cost was about $1,350. So you can see there's quite a savings in comparison to buying them, and you get to make the recipe you like. So you can make sure it's something you'll be happy with. Or if you have a dietary restriction of some kind, you can make something that you can eat. Some of them would probably cost more than that, and some of them would probably cost less. But on an average, if we took $7, it's looking pretty good. And some of them I know would be considerably more than that. Okay, so I'll get these packed back in the bins. I'll give a little bit better recap if I can on the computer, show the sheets. And it is downloadable. I've got a link to it. All you got to do is click the file and download, and you can have a copy of it. All right, I'll put these back away and cover anything else. I finished the 50 batch series just over 4 weeks ago. But here I am, still haven't done a wrap up of it. And mostly because I just couldn't figure out how to present the information. It's so much easier when somebody asks me a question about it, I can just answer that question. Otherwise, I could just go on for hours about it with mundane details that just nobody cares about. So, with that in mind, this might have a lot of mundane details that you just don't care about. This is the spreadsheet that I set up for tracking all the information that people had asked about. So it has the batch number, the date it went into the freeze dryer, what it is, the weight before it was freeze dried, the weight afterwards, the number of bags that I put it in and which size. And there are a couple of them that are not on here, so for cost reasons I just use the 2 quart size. They're the scallop potatoes that used the bigger bag than the 2 quart, or at least it's an older bag that's a flat one without the gusseted bottom, so it is different. And then next I have the total time for the batch, and people always ask how long does a batch take. Well, this has batch time, but it's not a reliable number for how long did it actually take. This is how long it was before I knew it was dry. And so sometimes that includes hours and hours where it's sitting or waiting, or it's been dry for quite some time. So these are kind of the outside limits. Some of them could be many hours less than that. Then next I have the power use in kilowatt hours, so you could convert it to whatever power costs where you are. Where we're at, we're lucky enough that it's close to 10 cents, so it's easy to do the math, and I just use 10 cents as my number. And then I have a area that's just the costs, so the cost of the food, the bags, the oxygen absorbers, and the power. Yeah, at 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And again, that's not going to work for basically anybody. But it's a easy measure. If your electricity cost is 20 cents, you can just double that number. Okay, then there's the total cost of that batch. And then next I have serving size, number of servings in the batch, calories per serving, and the total calories of that batch. On some of the later ones, I don't have all that information, so I need to go back and try to either calculate it, estimate it, or get it if it's a canned or bagged thing that has it listed. So some of it I just don't have. And then last column I have a link to the videos for that particular item. And I think I've got this as a pinned comment, a link to this as a pinned comment on all of these videos. So you feel free to go there, download it, just hit file, download or save, and you can have a copy of it. Some people seem to have a problem making that work, and I think on some things like maybe Apple devices or something, you have to have some kind of other file download helper or something. Anyway, somebody had some problems with it, and then they figured it out that you had to have something else to go with that. So there's the 50 batches, the date that it went in, and the various foods. As far as what worked and what didn't work for these 50, most of the things in here, almost everything in here, are things that we had done before, so that we knew that they would work and approximately how they worked out, and most of the things we've used them before. Now, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and now we've got the totals. So this column, so this is the total weight in grams before it is freeze-dried. Or to be more specific, this is the total wet weight of the food. And the reason I say wet weight as opposed to before it was freeze-dried is because of a couple of the items like the dried hash browns and the minute rice. They're already dry, but we used the rehydrated weight as the amount of food it was. So for instance, each box of the hash browns makes a pound of hash browns, but it only weighs like 3 or 4 ounces in that box. We used the 1 pound weight for each of those boxes. And because of that, we were able to do more than the 500 pounds in those 50 batches. We have 543 pounds in those 50 batches. And then the weight after it is freeze-dried is 130 pounds. So 410 pounds, 413 pounds of water was lost in comparison to the wet weight. We had a total of 649 bags that we used, and that number will become a little bit important later. Okay, now the food costs and the bag costs. So I'm going to just scroll this right up under there. Okay, so the total cost of the food for the 543 pounds was $958. We could round it to $959. So about $959. And the cost of the bags was $174 approximately. Now you could save money on the bags and oxygen absorbers by bagging them in bigger bags, so use less of them. Especially like on my sister's batches. On her batch alone, her bin, the J bin, there was 121 bags. On ours, the average was 72. So that would have made a difference on this. So you could probably easily cut this in half if you bagged everything in the bigger bags. We like the smaller bags because it really works for us. And it's not the biggest cost of it. Okay, and then the power at 10 cents a kilowatt hour was only just under $138. Now, you may need to double or triple that depending on where you live. Some areas I think I've seen as high as a utility at 35 cents a kilowatt hour. So that would be 3.5 times that. Then it becomes much more significant, and you'd really have to probably do a better job than I did on getting the food out of there as soon as it's dry, not leaving it set overnight. The batch that's currently in there right now is a second batch in a row of refried beans. It sat with the refrigeration unit running but not freeze drying for 12 hours overnight before I checked it this afternoon. Well, that would be when it's running with the freezer unit, that's close to 350 or something watts. So you're going to have a kilowatt every 3 hours while it's running. So that would have used about 4 kilowatt hours while it wasn't freeze drying. That wouldn't be great if your costs were much higher. Unfortunately, ours is low enough that we don't really worry about it as much, but it would be a much more important deal if you were running it off of solar or generating your own, or if the cost was simply much higher. So that's one place to look for a cost savings. Now, the total costs of the way we did it is about $1,350. Now, okay. Now I want to change to... Yeehaw! Let me find this other sheet real quick. Okay, so this is our inventory sheet for that batch. So this is from our database showing where to find things. And if you'll notice, that number does not match the 649 that we had. That's because we've already used a few of them by this time, and 9 of the eggs from this batch were Gary's, and so they're not in there. So anyway, so it's a little bit off, but this is how we set up our database. And so we have each bin, or more importantly, we can sort it by date. So if we're just looking for the oldest items we have, let's pretend that we only have these 8 bins as opposed to the 48 bins that we have. So this is like a side database just for this series. So we can sort it by date and find the oldest items, and then it'll show us where it is. Or we can sort by bin, and currently we have it sorted by bin with a subcategory of alphabetical order by food. We can sort it by food, by date, by bin. So if we want to just know where all the eggs are, we could sort by eggs, and it would show in any batch and show us which bin and the date that it's from. As I mentioned, if we ignore bin J, which isn't ours, our bins are 1 through 7. We added those up, divided by the 7. We get that in ours, the average for each bin is 72.5 bags. So bin 5 is almost our ideal average bin. That's why we used that one for demonstrating how many's in a bin, or to visualize how many was in there by laying them out the way we did. Now, one other piece that I wanted to mention here. Let me go back to this. Excuse me, let me go back to this one. Okay. So again, the costs of about $1,350 and 649 bags. Here's what I wanted to show next. The medium freeze dryer, as of today, the 2nd of September 2022, is just about $2,900 for the white one, the black one. The stainless steel one's an extra $100, I think. And that's for the medium. The large one does give you a great deal more volume, but you do have to make sure you have the power source for it. So for some people that would mean actually having some wiring done if you can't do it yourself. And for some people it would be difficult or limit where they could put it. For us, we could have done it, but it would have restricted where we could put it to a couple of different places, and frankly we didn't really want it there. The main reason that we didn't get it is because 5 years ago it was a newer machine, and it said that the power usage was higher than it is now. So they've made some great improvements on them. And we thought that the medium size would be perfect for our need. I wouldn't mind having a second medium one, or maybe a large one, but I like the sizes that this does as far as the blocks of food, but we would adapt to anything. So the importance of that still, though, is the $2,900, because if we take the number of bags, and we multiply that out, I don't know if I can do that. Let me see if I can do that on the sheet. Okay, so if we take that 649 bags, and if we give them an average value of $7, I looked at a bunch of freeze-dried camping type bag sizes from Mountain House, and we are going to be doing a series with those later. And the cheapest one that I found was about $8. Most of them are $8 to $9.50, $10. So if we used just $7, oh, and they were similar sizes. Their beef stew was identical size of our beef stew the way we bagged it. Their chili was the same size. So a bunch of their things are about the same size. Some of theirs were smaller. Some of ours were a little smaller, but on the average it was about the same size bags, except for the ones that we have that are like the scallop potatoes, which was greatly bigger than theirs, their bags of food. But if we use $7 as our number, I guess I could have made that bigger while I was yakking. Oh well, I don't know how to do that yet. If we use $7 as our number, $7 per bag, that works out to $4,543 total. Now, if you take the total costs if you take the total that we spent on, I don't need these on for that. If you take the total that we spent for the food, the bags, the oxygen absorber, the electricity, everything there, it's $1,349, so roughly $1,350. And then you look at the price of the machine at $2,900, and you add those together, you get $4,250 for this batch. If you were to have bought this many bags of the smaller bags, of course, I mean, you'd get it would be less expensive when you're buying big number 10 cans. But if you bought this many bags of regular freeze-dried food, it would have cost about $4,500 to buy this machine and all the food bags, oxygen absorbers, to produce this number of bags. It's about 42.5. So this is already cheaper in 50 batches than buying that amount of freeze-dried food. So again, people ask, well, how many batches do you have to do to break even? It might be around 50, maybe a little less. And it depends on what you freeze dry. If you do a lot of vegetables, well, the vegetables cost less. If you do a lot of meats and meals cost more. So if we assume the $7 a bag, so to buy this many bags of freeze-dried food would cost about that much. to buy your own freeze dryer and freeze dry that many bags of food or that much food would cost this much. So I think that's about it on that. Potential other question is what worked, what didn't work. Let me give that a look. Let's go back to the other sheet and compare. The bird's eye garlic chicken is good. We've done it before. We've used it before. Real happy with it. Diced chicken, we've used it and been happy with it. Costco rotisserie chicken. That's a great one because you get $20 and you can get the 10 pounds of chicken. So get 4 nice big plump chickens. You've got 10 pounds worth of meat there. It's excellent. It's a good bargain in comparison to, for instance, this chicken. That diced chicken there was $40 or $50. I think the current price is about $60 for 10 pounds of pre-cooked diced chicken. So the rotisserie chicken from Costco costs a little bit, or takes a little bit more effort, but it certainly costs less, and it's great. I think it's better chicken than the other. All of these, always been happy with them. The cherry pie filling, that's the first time we had done it that way. And it seems to work out very well. It's very delicious. It would have been interesting to have done it directly from our tree, but our neighbors' trees now shade our cherry trees, and we just don't get many cherries. So those cherries were from a few years ago. Ham slices, cubes, that rehydrates almost instantly, and I honestly can't tell the difference between that and freeze-dried, or if it wasn't freeze-dried. It's just great. The ice cream, I really like the little scoops. I like the look of them. They're nice little bite-sized pieces practically. Yeah, I really like those. The diced sweet potatoes, I think in the future, I think I would have just stuck with mashed sweet potatoes. Maybe I'll try some other chip type ones, but they were good flavors. The home ground beef, I'm really happy with that. I like when we grind our own. I think that was in an earlier one too. Yeah, it must have been. And then the eggs in the different, so the whole eggs, the egg whites, the egg yolks, those always seem to work out well. Pineapple most of the time seems to kind of collapse a bit as it's freeze-dried. I'm not really sure why. And mangoes really do that, but I don't really care because I don't like mango. But we've tried it, and it does seem to collapse. If you have like a French fry shape of a piece of mango, it collapses to the shape kind of like an I-beam, with flat cross sections. It's really interesting. The meatballs and mushroom sauce is great. And the oatmeal, this is the first time I've done the oatmeal with the dry oatmeal like this. I will definitely do a bunch more of that. I couldn't be happier with it, with the one exception. I probably wouldn't use the original regular. I would use the quick or the instant oats for future ones, because you do have to let it set longer than I had wanted to. So I'll try to do that with a instant one or a minute one and compare those. Other than that, really happy with it. I like the flavors, the textures, really nice. Okay, and these are my sister's ones. I really couldn't tell you a lot about using those except for the chocolate mousse. Chocolate mousse is great. We will do a video later with the different mousses, the chocolate mousse, the raspberry, no, what is it? Cranberry mousse, the lemon mousse, and the chocolate mousse. Excellent. I think the lemon's probably my favorite. Let's see. And The chocolate chip cookies that she does, the little teeny ones, I don't think any of them have been left for long-term storage. I think those end up getting snacked and given away. I know she gives a lot of her stuff away. And then the minute rice, that does great. Okay, so I don't think there was any other things that were really stood out, either good or bad. I mean, all of it's good. You know, if you want to show somebody the awesomeness of freeze-dried and rehydrating, take a nice slice of ham, a spiral sliced ham slice that's dry as can be. It's delicious dry too. And just wave it under some water, running water, and get it wet for 10 seconds and then try it. It really does great. Chicken doesn't do great for eating it. So the cooked diced chicken doesn't do great for eating it dry, because dry chicken is ridiculously dry. It'll suck all the moisture out of your mouth dry. Whereas ham doesn't. It's just so delicious. But the chicken is its texture before it dry or rehydrates is lacking. Still good. So, but try a very small piece at first. Okay. So I think that's it for that recap. Please ask any questions you have. If it's a bigger question, we'll add another little video. If it's a smaller question, I'll just try to answer it in the comments. Thanks. And as I said, I've been meaning to get this out for quite a while. The number 50 batch went into the freeze dryer, I think, on August 3rd. And as I do this, it's September 2nd. So it's almost a month ago that it went in. And so it's been out for quite a while. Just haven't gotten around to this thing. We've continued to do batches. I think we're 12 or 13 more batches after this. And so a lot more videos will be coming out, and we'll be doing a lot more of them with rehydration also. So thanks for watching, and thanks for supporting.